Hello, guys. Welcome to Bookshelf, Episode 7. We have a very special guest, first ever for Bookshelf. We have the actual writers of a comic named WATSON and HOLMES here with us today. Could you introduce yourselves to our audience?
My name is Karl Boller. I'm the writer.
Okay.
And I'm Rick Leonardi, the penciler.
And I'm the publisher.
Yes, and here on Bookshelf today, we'll be covering this book exclusively in a departure from our usual format. So GetSelious, could you tell our audience a little bit of how we got this little thing started?
Oh, we got it started. There was after our video special at Karl Street Comics. Hopefully, all of our viewers have seen it. They had an opening party, and us being us party goers, we decided to just don our finest suit and go down to the Karl Street Comic opening party. Unfortunately, the party was somewhat delayed, and I guess in a way semi-canceled due to situations of John Georgia's doing his thing, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, he had his thing to do. We had a chance to meet.
There was no beer.
Plus, there was no beer. Yes, that's the only reason why Carlos came, just for the beer, and forget the party. Man. But anyway, I met Mr. Bradon Perlow at the party. He was talking to one of the owners, I believe Mike, and talking about his new comic, WATSON and HOLMES, getting published. It was coming out sometime next month, right?
Yeah, July 17th.
And then he and I just talked and hit it off, and look what happened. We started Bookshelf Episode 7.
All right, so Karl, you're the writers of WATSON and HOLMES?
Yes, I am.
All right, so I guess what gave you the inspiration to have a Sherlock Holmes set in the city with a majority black cast?
Well, I have to give credit to Bradon. Bradon was actually the one who came up with the idea to do an African-American version of Sherlock Holmes, and he hired editor Justin Gabri to basically shepherd the book. Justin and I, we had a history. I've worked for him before in the past for Archie Comics and also for Marvel.
I knew your name was very familiar. Yeah, Karl Boller. Were you part of the... I'm sorry for saying this. Were you part of the Sonic the Hedgehog editing team?
I wrote Sonic the Hedgehog for 7 years.
Oh, yeah, now I recognize that name.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun. And Justin was the editor on Sonic during that time, and he's also editing WATSON and HOLMES.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Justin approached me, told me a little bit about Brandon's idea, and once I heard it, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was a lot of fun, so I was brought on to, develop the characters, take the story, the rough story outline that they had, flesh it out, and basically that's how we got our mini-series. And the other thing was when I heard that Rick Leonardi was going to be penciling it, I was like, wow, this is going to be really cool. So,
yeah, seeing his pencils is very remarkable.
And and as far as deciding to set it in New York, when I came on board, we hadn't really decided where it was going to be set. If it was going to be London, which kind of seemed a little off, or if it was going to be a fictional city. And I don't know, somewhere along the way, I felt like New York was like this transatlantic analog to London. I felt like...
I feel that's a fair comparison to make.
That's a fair comparison.
Yeah.
And I felt like I wanted it to be a real city. I didn't want it to be, just some fictional city like Gotham or Metropolis. And
you can't really do Sherlock Holmes much in a fictional city. It kind of takes away from his interactions with the cast and his interaction with the people in general.
Right, exactly. So that didn't feel right to me. So I felt New York was the place to really set it, and Harlem, that's like the African American Mecca. I mean, everyone around the world knows Harlem, and just even setting the story in the United States, I figure if we're going to make the characters African American, it should be in America. Otherwise you could have, like, I guess, a weird transplant of, African-American guys in London, and that might be interesting, but I felt that for the stories that we're trying to tell, we had to set it in the States.
So no Sherlock Holmes Wakanda?
No. His name is Black Panther. You don't want. It's hard to sell a series as it is. Pretty much just be Black Panther and Tony Stark.
I think it's been hard to sell ever since you've been divorced. Losing your wife to a. Yeah, let's put it that way.
It's hard to sell when everyone around you is just incompetent. I mean, having the Avengers like every time, it doesn't work like that.
If you've seen the TV, if you guys ever seen the Avengers TV show, The Earth's Mightiest Hero, pretty much Black Panther saved the day 90% of the time.
I love that show.
I do.
So,
it's funny that you mentioned that you wanted to make Sherlock Holmes and Watson into straight up African American, because looking at when I heard some of the dialogue coming from Holmes, there is still that unique British tinge about him that I thought we only got issue 2 right now, so I thought Sherlock was an African British coming to America, interacting with an African American Watson.
Oh, not at all. I've met guys who are African American who talk like that all the time. Who are very
doesn't Felicia Rashad kind of talk like that as well? I mean, at least her characters have. Where, like, they have a certain kind of lilt within their language that I've heard of some upper-class blacks have, but not too many, though.
Exactly, yeah, it has that upperclassmanship.
And really, anyone who really picks up a book and is learned tends to speak like that, and, they're very erudite.
Uh-huh.
And I guess I wanted to ask more about that, because when I saw the design of Holmes as a character, he seemed to have some Jamaican, I guess, Rastafarian type look, and I was really expecting him to have like a somewhat patois or a Caribbean type of tone in his voice when he speaks. It didn't really. Did that came into mind when you were making Holmes African American, especially with his design look?
I would say for myself, it went through many variations, but I'm curious to think of what Rick and Karl think, actually.
Well, the key thing here, of course, is the contrast. Having established Watson as this kind of big guy, and if you know anything about U.S. Air Force parajumpers, they're pretty formidable warriors. They're medics. They're kind of doctor warriors. So you have to picture a fairly formidable, squared away kind of body type for him, and that implies, by contrast, kind of a different sort of body type for Holmes. So wiry, lighter framed, long hair, obviously.
Yeah.
The guy almost starts to draw himself after a while. So your Jamaican idea is very good, because Sherlock Holmes, of course, is among many other talents is a master of disguise. So I shouldn't be surprised if one of these short stories upcoming he doesn't go full on Rastafarian.
The funny thing is that picturing him with his accent, his British accent, pulling it off, it'd be pretty hilarious to see. I mean, he'll pull it off. He's Holmes.
I don't know. Either you actually go full Rastafarian, but as Robert Downey Jr. will say, you never go full Rastafarian, man.
I have a book on how to write Jamaican patois.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Actually, if there was a Jamaican British Sherlock Holmes, I imagine he'd be like Idris Elba, only with dreadlocks.
Oh God.
Yeah.
So what's behind your decision to make Watson, like, I guess not a full doctor, but like what was it? What's his position called? It was like a paramedic or something like that.
Medical intern, I believe.
I think he's an emergency medic, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's a medical intern.
Yeah.
He's a medical intern.
Yeah, but he's working. He's obviously left the Air Force. He's got a lot of very practical medical training. But to complete his medical education, become a full-on doctor, he's been placed, probably by the Air Force, maybe by his own decision, in an internship in emergency medicine at Harlem Hospital, with privileges at some of the satellite places like Convent Medical, which you saw mentioned.
Yeah.
But Harlem Hospital is a level 1 trauma center, so he's going to see a lot of gunshot wounds, which he's already familiar with. So,
and it helps with the case-by-case basis, working with Holmes.
Yeah,
I see. So you chosen to have that level of responsibility, so that instead of him being a full doctor, he would have actual responsibilities to his patients, and in being a medical intern, he has more leeway to go and, I guess, punch the thugs that attempt to hurt Holmes.
Well, I think it also adds to his sort of, he's not quite adrift, but he hasn't exactly taken root yet back in Harlem or in New York or even in America. He's sort of kind of freshly out of the service. His marriage is in trouble. He's living out of the trunk of his car, basically. So this is all part of the characterization for the guy.
I see.
So he's at that place when he meets Holmes, and whenever Holmes meets Watson for the first time, it always brings a different reaction from each Watson. Some get annoyed, other gets fascinated and curious. How did is the dynamic between Holmes and Watson this time?
Well, I think this time he's kind of left with the impression. Well, first of all, when Holmes enters the emergency room, Watson is under the impression that he's speaking to a police detective. He just makes that assumption from the way Holmes carries himself and the knowledge that he seems to have of, this case that's just come across Watson's doorstep. And I think by the end of it, when he finds out that he's not a detective, he's sort of fascinated because he's already made plans with this guy to, get him medical paperwork. And so he's kind of left with this impression of who is this guy anyway?
Yeah, it shows throughout the I guess the first issue. If you should really pick it up when it comes out. It shows that how you see Holmes is not only just intellectual. He's very connected to the community. He was able to talk to the younger kids, the little hoppers that hang around the neighborhood. So he actually has a connection with one of the local drug gangsters there. And I was like, what? You know him? Okay.
Yes.
Holmes always had that eccentricity, his kind of ear to the ground to get his connections.
Yeah, this is shared through several versions of him.
Yeah. But I noticed this time he's a little more, I guess, friendly with the lower classes, if anything.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
certain other versions of Holmes, I kind of play him off to be aloof and almost semi-autistic in his focus, and in this one he's much more engaged in his community. He's still focused, but it's not like the other than his cases. He has no sense of place, I guess.
Right. Well, in the African American community, it's very important to be tied to it, and it doesn't help to not have friends because then you won't be connected. You won't get information. You just will be out of the loop. So I think in this version, in changing it culturally, that's another dynamic that's changed. He can't be as aloof.
Uh-huh.
Otherwise, he'll be viewed the way the community views the police.
Oh, my. That's true.
That's true. Speaking of police connections, we also still have Captain Lestrade, only
Lieutenant.
Detective Leslie Stroud this time. Yeah. And usually the banter between Lestrade and Holmes is classic. Sometimes it's an antagonist, sometimes it's a friendly rivalry. What will be the connection between Leslie and Holmes this time?
This time I see her as, I think when the conversation starts out, she's sort of going along with Holmes. He's very helpful at first, but I think he usually takes the long route with her to get to an answer. And so it's sort of like he's leading her along and asking questions of her and kind of making her look a little incompetent. probably not intentionally, but by the end of it, she's sort of exasperated, and she's like, "Okay, Holmes, get on with it. Get it out."
Get on with it.
I get it. You're the smartest man in the room. You already proved it to me. Oh man, but there's one thing I actually kind of was I always wanted to know about when it came to this version of Holmes. When it comes to, you mentioned him not being aloof. Do you feel that because of his African American nature, who he is, does he have to be more connected to the people in the city, and that might change, I guess, his morality? Because he's a detective, he finds the truth. At the same time, when you're more socially connected, the sense of truth and justice tends to be a little bit perverse. Do you think that would affect his character in this universe anyway?
What it means is, like, Sherlock has always been amoral. He doesn't care about the people who he comes in contact with. He's more into the mystery, right. Trying to solve the puzzle rather to trying to get justice.
I think that there is a lot of that to this version of Holmes. I think Watson seems to be more the one who cares about the victims. Holmes cares about getting the answers. And the victims, it's not that he doesn't care about them, but he's almost like a little, OCD about getting to the truth.
Mm-hmm. There's actually a moment in issue 3 where they actually have that precise discussion. Yeah. Where Watson has to decide whether to continue on with this case with Holmes, knowing that the danger is starting to multiply. And I think one of the reasons he continues on is because he recognizes Holmes' fascination with getting the answer is very likely to get him killed. And Watson is starting to feel, concerned for Holmes and is starting to feel a bit protective of it. So it goes along, even though it really makes much more practical, real-world sense for Watson to kind of tip out at that point.
Yeah, I noticed during the panels there's like plenty of action, a little more action than most version of Holmes associated. Well, maybe the Robert Downey Jr. a little more exasperated, but you see Watson do a lot more. You even see Holmes, who's a lot more active. Whenever you see some of the action shots, he's running along. He's giving Watson some bullets. He's actually confronting the villains themselves. And then there was that chase. I remember there was like a chase where he was walking around the traffic
on the bridge.
Yeah, on the bridge. And he was chasing down another criminal. You don't see Holmes do much of that, even in his most action-centric. He usually lets Watson or the police will get on that. And then when he does get the criminal, it's mostly an intellectual fight, not a gunfight. So we'll be seeing Holmes being more active?
Yes. I mean, I think, making it contemporary kind of adds this whole element of, we have semi-automatic weapons now that, really weren't around in the 19th century.
They don't even have much semi-automatics in recent ones like Sherlock, the BBC Sherlock.
Not a lot of guns in England either.
Exactly.
Yeah, actually, that is true as well.
And that's another aspect of setting it in America. Mm-hmm. We're a gun society.
Well, just as Holmes is going to be, a bit more active than perhaps we've traditionally seen, Watson is going to be. He's going to be, no slouch either when it comes to deduction. I think there's going to be some blurring of the roles.
Yes.
Let's see.
Very interesting. As a matter of fact, in one of the recent scripts I was doing, I have them both say the answer at the same time.
So it's going to be that romance.
Yeah.
Eventually, to start completing each other's sentences.
Oh, jeez.
They're not at that level.
Yeah. Well, speaking of dangers and escalating risks, we already seen Leslie Stroud, a classic Holmes recurring character. What are your plans for, say, Irene Adler, or of course Professor Moriarty?
A lot more of Moriarty. I guess you could say the presence will be explained by issue 5.
Okay.
We have a totally different take. We're not going to say much on it. Adler, we're still working on, but we would totally like to have a different take than the BBC or the CBS take. That's for sure. We'd like to actually harken back to like the original concept of the character.
Oh, that'll be very interesting.
And as far as Moriarty, without saying too much, all I am going to say is that this version of Moriarty is going to be unlike any version you've ever seen before.
Oh.
Ever.
Awesome. Will he have? I just want to know. Will he have a monocle and he'll swerve? He'll have a bottle of scotch swerving in his hand and says, "Hello, Holmes, I'm here." Will he do? Oh, he won't. Darn.
Wait, is he going to be Camp Gay like the one on the BBC? Hi, Sherlock. Oh, wait a minute. If this Sherlock is an African American from Harlem.
Hold up, I'm calling it. Moriarty, Latino, in 3 issues. Game.
No, I got it better. I'm calling it Moriarty, owner of Burger King. Burger King store manager.
Moriarty, Latino, owner of Burger King, from Dumbo, wears nothing but short shorts, dyes his hair.
That's his hair.
Hey, Sherlock.
Bingo.
And he lifts.
Okay, I think
Bingo. You got it.
I did it. All right, that's great.
Nailed it.
All right, here on Bookshelf,
Yes,
that's right. We just spoiled an issue 5 book for you guys.
GetSelious for the win.
Does that make him a Kickstarter contributor?
Not yet. Hopefully. But
I have to ask though. I guess. Have you taken any other inspiration from other pulp works in composing Watson and Holmes, like from other pulp detective style works, like say The Shadow or The Spirit or what have you?
No, I'm not really familiar with The Shadow, and I've never read The Spirit.
Okay.
So
what?
I know, right?
What?
Hey, I was brave enough to admit it, so cut me some slack. Okay?
You're brave enough. All right. Oh, man. Hopefully your bravery will end up you rewarded, if not you being hurt by your fan base. Like, how dare you not read The Spirit?
I know, right?
Comic book writer and you never read Will Eisner?
Awful.
Awful.
Well, I mean, it's probably worth pointing out that all those people that you just mentioned actually borrow from Sherlock Holmes rather than the other way around.
Oh, that is true.
That is true.
I guess I mentioned them because it's a blend between because they're set in like the early modern era. So I guess like they're like I guess most people's conception of like a private eye detective comes from aspects of Sherlock and other things like the great deal of monologuing that takes place within this story.
Like Dick Tracy or
Yeah.
Sin City, those kind of stuff. Heading over into the art thing, I love the rough pencil work that you did, Rick.
Well, thanks.
Well, and I often think, are you going to go into post-production with this? Because I don't think you should change it much.
Well, that's actually the dirty little secret here is that we've for better or for worse, we've done away with the inker and scanned the pencils direct, but there is an enormous amount of work that goes on after the scans get put into Photoshop. So much so that in terms of an hour-by-hour basis, you might actually have been better off handing them off to an inker. But yeah, I actually like the result. I think they're.
I like the result. If you do have to make any color, I would suggest trying to go for a monotone or simply a two-tone color, because multifaceted color doesn't work very well with these pencils. These pencils are so beautiful, and often I've seen inkers and colorers ruin very good pencils just by adding so many details.
Well, what's interesting is that there is so much, because of the scanning process, there's so much artifact left on the page apart from the lines themselves, grit and just smearing and stuff like that. That flat colors actually work a lot better because there's already kind of this sort of implied modeling going on. You don't need to model these things almost. There's some unintentional shading happening anyway.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And, the grit of the rough pencils just work very well with the action scenes and the atmosphere that you're trying to get. It does have that noir feel without doing the old-fashioned black and white, heavy inking, rough Frank Miller faces.
Yeah.
Completely incomprehensible. You managed to make it to create that atmosphere of noir without having to go into exaggeration.
And unlike Frank Miller, Watson and Holmes has not smacked any woman in the face yet. There has been no women abuse so far.
There's only been one woman abused in the series.
Watson's wife.
Watson's wife.
Poor girl.
Well, no, the girl got smacked in the head in the second issue.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
We fulfilled our quota.
Our quota. Yeah, I bet Perlow was like, you guys have to smack at least one woman this issue. Come on, guys, we have a deadline to hit.
Oh, jeez. Oh, well, as long as no women end up in fridges, I think we're still okay.
Yeah. Or in a hospital.
What venues are you thinking about taking this publication?
In what sense venues?
Not just comic book stores, but
Comixology, etc.
Comixology, etc. Are you thinking about collecting this into a hardcover?
We have the first 2 issues on Comixology, Comic Plus, Amazon. I'm going to try and get the 3rd issue on iTunes, but we got the first 2 on iTunes. Issue 3 should be up anytime soon from Comixology.
It's up on Nook.
Yeah, it's up on Nook on Amazon. Yeah, I personally put that up on there. We are finishing issue 4 right now. We have black and white comics of the noir editions that we're selling just at convention. So we sold out of issue 1. We have 2s and 3s left, and we'll be making some 4s soon. For the Kickstarter, we have a trade paperback that we're making of the first 4 issues in black and white.
That's cool.